Is Vancouver real estate market about to experience another cool down thanks to the new immigration policies? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Last week, the government of Canada has announced some new targets for their population and immigration numbers. If everything goes according to their plan, the population of Canada should decline by 0.2% in 2025 and 2026 and return back to the population growth of about 0.8% in 2027. The way they're going to try to achieve this goal is with a couple of different approaches. The key to them are, number one, reducing the number of permanent resident statuses issued in the next few years. In 2025, we will see 395 permanent resident statuses issued as opposed to 500,000 that was planned previously. In 2026, that number will be even lower, 380,000, once again opposed to 500,000. And in 2027, that target is even lower at 365,000. At the same time as the number of permanent residents is being cut, we will also see some cuts to the number of temporary workers and temporary residents in Canada. The goal for Canadian government, as my understanding goes, is to have the transition of temporary workers and temporary residents in Canada to either transition to the permanent resident status or to leave the country and not to let in as many temporary workers for the next little bit to sort of balance out the population and, as I mentioned previously, have the population decline slightly. That would be the first time in history that population of Canada would shrink, but that's of course if everything goes according to their plan. This plan has drawn some criticism, especially from the commerce boards, because immigration and temporary workers is a big part of Canadian business. Now, not having this influx of immigration, of help, is going to hurt some businesses, especially businesses that plan years ahead, construction industry, services industry, etc., etc. Now, that is actually where another sort of side of the story lies, and that's on the housing supply and the different studies that are being conducted as we speak. According to this article from Global BC, we might see the home supply gap shrink by about 45%. It's not to say that there will not be a gap anymore between supply and demand. There will still be a gap, but this gap should shrink if everything goes according to plan. And here are the things that should go according to plan. Number one, there needs to be a lot more housing starts. Currently, Canada is still lacking behind even their own projections. They need to be on track to build about 2.3 million housing units between 2025 and 2030. Currently, we are on track to build only 1.7 million, so that is a pretty big discrepancy. Once again, this 45% reduction in the gap sort of assumes that we will be on track to have this 2.3 million housing units figure, which currently we're not on track to do that. The second thing that this assumes is that everything goes well with the program. It assumes that all the foreign workers that currently have temporary status in Canada would just voluntarily leave or apply for permanent resident status and wait for that. So that is another sort of question whether that will happen or not, and what sort of systems the Canadian government will implement to monitor those numbers. Lastly, the government assumes that the lack of temporary workers in the construction industry will not affect the housing supply. In other words, we will have less demand for housing because there will be less people. At the same time, we will have less people to build housing because a lot of temporary workers are working in construction industry or industry related to construction. So that is another sort of hiccup / problem that needs to be ironed out. I think this kind of goes hand in hand with the changes that we've seen with international students policies. I've actually done a separate video all about that. So now having these restrictions also placed on permanent residents as well as temporary workers sort of add on this effect that Canada is trying to achieve. They are really trying to reduce the demand for rental housing, because realistically speaking, if you're a temporary worker, you probably are not buying a place in Canada, and currently you're not even allowed to legally buy a place in Canada unless you're a permanent resident. So this change will likely affect the rental market first, and that should have a spillover effect into the other areas of real estate. And in the future, I'll try to keep you updated on this YouTube channel about any articles or studies that are coming out about this change to the immigration policy and how that affects the real estate market. If you're a buyer in Greater Vancouver and you're not really sure where to start, I do have an absolutely free course that kind of goes over the buying process here in BC. That will be linked in the description below. It's not a sales pitch, it just kind of goes over everything you need to know, and you don't even need to sign up for anything. It's just a tool, so feel free to check that out. Also, if you're looking to buy or sell some real estate, or if you just need real estate advice, I am a working realtor here, so you can give me a call, shoot me an email, shoot me a text message. I'd be happy to help. Thanks for watching this video all the way until the end, and we'll see you next time. Bye.